When my sister texted me demanding $2,800 for prom like it was my responsibility, I finally said no. 2 words. Earn it yourself. What I didn't expect was the meltdown, the family pressure, the social media drama, and the quiet chain reaction that followed. Within days, her world shifted, her excuses ran out, and reality hit hard. This isn't a story about cruelty. It's about boundaries, consequences, and the moment entitlement finally met effort. My name is Lauren Whitmore, and when my younger sister texted me, "Send me $2,800 for prom," like I was her personal ATM instead of a human being with rent, bills, and a full-time job, I stared at my phone for a second before replying, "Earn it yourself," because after years of being the responsible one, the fixer, the quiet provider in our family, I was done rewarding entitlement, and I thought that would be the end of it, just a little sibling tension, maybe some sulking, but nothing dramatic. And then a few minutes later my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree with frantic messages from my mother, my aunt, and even my stepfather asking what I had said to Madison, because apparently my simple 2-word reply had triggered a full-blown meltdown, and as I read the messages piling in, I realized this wasn't really about prom, it was about control, expectation, and a family dynamic where Madison had learned that if she demanded loudly enough, someone would always cave, and for the first time, that someone wasn't me, and I could almost feel the shockwaves traveling through the house 3 states away, because I'd moved out years ago to build my own life, to work my way up in marketing, to pay off student loans, to learn what independence actually meant, while Madison stayed home and got used to being the center of attention, the baby, the one whose mistakes were forgiven and whose wants were treated like needs, and I remembered every time I skipped trips, worked overtime, and ate ramen so I could help with groceries when mom was short, every time I sent money for school supplies, for sports fees, for emergencies, that always seemed to happen around shopping season, and I didn't regret helping, but I did resent that no one ever seemed to notice, and now here was Madison, 16 years old, demanding almost $3,000 for a dress, hair, makeup, and a limo, like it was nothing, like I should be honored to fund her Instagram moment, and when I refused, the family machine kicked into gear, guilt, pressure, emotional blackmail, and passive-aggressive comments about how family supports family, and I listened, quietly at first, because I wanted to see how far they would push, and they pushed hard, with mom calling me ungrateful, my aunt reminding me of all the sacrifices made for me, and Madison sending me crying selfies, saying I was ruining her life, and I didn't respond, because I was done being manipulated, and that silence apparently sent Madison into a spiral, because instead of asking nicely or trying to compromise, she went nuclear, posting vague, dramatic stories on social media about being abandoned and betrayed, letting her friends and their parents see it, letting the narrative spread that her own sister wouldn't help her. And that was when something interesting happened, because one of those parents happened to be the owner of the boutique Madison had been planning to charge the dress to, and she messaged me directly, politely asking if everything was okay, because Madison had implied I was handling payment, and I replied honestly, explaining that I would not be paying for the dress and that Madison had been told to earn her own prom money, and the boutique owner thanked me for clarifying and said she would require full payment up front, no holds, no exceptions, and I smiled to myself, because for the first time, Madison was facing a real boundary, and it was starting to affect her in real ways, and within an hour, my phone buzzed again, this time with Madison herself, no longer dramatic, just panicked, asking why the boutique wouldn't hold the dress anymore, why her friends were saying their parents had heard things, why people were asking questions, and I told her calmly that when you involve other people in your drama, you lose control of the story, and she didn't like that answer, but she couldn't argue with it, and that's when I learned she had already told half her school that her rich sister was paying for everything, that she had promised rides, dinners, and pictures, and now she was scrambling to explain why the money wasn't there, and I didn't feel bad, because I had never offered, never agreed, never implied anything, she had simply assumed, and assumption is a dangerous thing when reality shows up, and over the next few days, the pressure intensified, with family group chats, emotional voicemails, and even my grandmother weighing in, saying I should just do it to keep the peace, and I finally snapped, not in anger, but in clarity, and I sent one long message explaining that I loved Madison, that I wanted her to enjoy prom, but that I was not responsible for funding luxuries, that I had worked for every dollar I had, and that if she wanted something, she needed to learn to work for it too, and I muted the thread, because I was done debating my worth, and that's when the twist came, because Madison, in a fit of desperation, took a part-time job at a local cafe, something she had always refused to do because she said it was embarrassing, and suddenly she was posting about long shifts, sore feet, and rude customers, and I watched quietly as reality introduced itself. As she learned that money doesn't appear just because you want it, that effort precedes reward, and I didn't gloat, I didn't comment, I didn't say, "I told you so," I just let her experience it, and 2 weeks later, she messaged me again, this time differently, no attitude, no demand, just a simple, "I didn't know it was this hard," and I replied, "Now you do," and that conversation changed something, because for the first time, she saw me not as an endless resource, but as a person, and prom came and went, she wore a cheaper dress, did her own makeup, rode with friends instead of a limo, and from the pictures, she still looked happy, and I was genuinely glad, because the goal was never to punish her, it was to teach her, and what destroyed her entitlement wasn't my refusal, it was the realization that the world doesn't bend just because you're upset, and weeks later, my mom called, her tone softer, more reflective, and admitted that maybe they had leaned on me too much, maybe they had enabled Madison, and I didn't say, "I know," I just listened, because sometimes growth is quiet, and the real revenge wasn't watching Madison struggle, it was watching my family finally understand that I wasn't their safety net, I was their daughter, their sister, a person with limits, and when Madison eventually thanked me, awkwardly, for not giving in, for making her figure it out, I smiled, because nothing feels better than being respected instead of used, and that all started with 2 words, "Earn it yourself," and the courage to stand by them.